we are now streaming live. Hi, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat. We are only 20 minutes late. Sorry, everyone. But we are here. And we've got with us today Trish Uhl. Linda Joy is right next to me there. And then we've got Trish Uhl. Do you want to put the 3-shot on? Let's get her in here. There she is. And so this is our pre-show. We're just going through the shots, making sure everybody's audio is good. We've been chatting for a while, and for some odd reason, we all totally forgot to put the stream on for our pre-show. So we'll have a very short pre-show, and now we'll go back to this, and we will start the show recording
Did Trish have her credentials on the lower third?
She did.
Oh, okay. I didn't see him. Oh, good, good. I see him.
There they are.
Oh, but Owl's Ledge. It says Owl's Ledge there, and we're not supposed to.
Oh.
Can we can we change it on the fly? Can we change it
Yes.
to my @Trish Uhl?
Yep.
Good catch, Linda. Thank you for that.
So he's going to change that. And by the way, this happens whenever we have Trish on. She's very engaging, and it completely distracts us from everything we're supposed to be doing. And so we forget to turn the stream on. We forget to record the show. It's her glow. I'm telling you, she just glows. We love Trish. @Trish Uhl like that? Is that what you want?
It's cut off on my screen. So if it's
okay,
Trish
sorry.
Uhl, that's perfect. That's fabulous.
It'll show up on the recording. It's just that we have an aspect ratio issue on that one TV. Okay, I think we're good then. Okay, so now we're going to start the show. Good catch, Linda. Okay, so here we go. So let's start the show recording in 3, 2, and 1. Hello, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where talk is knowledge. And we've got a talker with us today. And I'm not talking Linda. She's a talker too, but I'm quiet next to everybody. And I'm not that quiet. But anyway, hey, Linda, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Rick.
Good. And, last week we did a show on you, Linda. We did a show on you and your voiceover talents and the things you do. And if you're looking for anybody who does voiceover, Linda would be more than glad to help you out. She does
absolutely
a British voice. She can even fake that she's English, like American English. And though her parents were American, so that's sort of interesting. And she can do German and combine them all and to get some other language. But
no
combining them all. And we've got with us Trish Uhl today. But first, our quick little intro. Here we go. And we are back. See, a little bit of static in there. Let's introduce Trish Uhl. Trish Uhl is with us today. Hey, Trish, how are you?
Hey, Rick. I'm just fine. Linda, how are you guys? Thank you.
I'm doing great. Hi, Trish.
We're doing well. Somehow you moved off the edge of the screen a little bit. There you go. Now you're back in the middle.
Nice.
Trish, she does a lot of things. She is a CPLP. She is, she's an IT pro. She was in IT for a long time. Mm-hmm. Training. Now you're doing analytics and predictive analytics. You're doing all sorts of interesting things. You've been a coach, a teacher. You write books, an author. She's even nice. I mean, she shouldn't be nice. With that much talent, they're usually rotten. She's very nice.
And she is the Top Young Trainer Award recipient.
I didn't know that
Thank you,
either.
Linda. Yeah. There's for Training Magazine from a few years ago now, but yes, and actually one of the people that helps to continue to build out that community in order to not only add more. They now call it, Training Magazine now calls it the Emerging Learner Leader Award. But helping people to achieve that award and to aspire to that award and helping to connect that community is actually one of the things that I'm pretty passionate about.
That's cool. Well, Trish, you do a lot of stuff. You've been involved in just about every aspect of training, and I think you've been involved with e-learning. You've been involved with a lot of different aspects of it. Lately, you've gotten into predictive analytics. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's actually, so the problem that we've been trying to solve is that many organizations are now trying to move to a much more people-centric type of culture, right? Mm-hmm. So whether it is that they've got to focus on being able to attract, recruit, retain talent, especially specialized talent, or they've got a people-centric focus on serving customers, right? So it's no longer as much about, the property that we own or the widgets that we manufacture and produce. It has to do with people. It has to do with really making sure that we are engaging both our internal employees as well as the clients and the customers that we serve. So as we start to move more and more in that direction, what's happening is that the training and development function is transforming into more of the strategic learning and performance capability. And learning and performance matters more in this era where people-centric culture really matters, because we have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And not just us internally to the organizations, but again, oftentimes we're working with our customers and our clients over a much longer relationship. It's not so transactional anymore. We're working oftentimes with our suppliers, we're working with vendors. In some cases, some organizations are working with their competitors. And really the value proposition for organizations has changed to people, right? How do we better serve people and come together as people? So we have to be more effective in the learning programs that we offer, and to be more effective, we have to have better ways of being able to measure, monitor, and manage. And predictive analytics are one of the ways that we can do that in being able to course correct or to make amends as it is that we're moving forward in learning programs, rather than the traditional measurement and evaluation, which is often at the end of something and looking back with lessons learned and looking behind.
Well, there's a reason why they used to call that a post-mortem. After every project, they would do a post-mortem after death. And it made you really wonder, how did that project go? Yeah. So it makes much more sense to catch it as it's going, or even before, and have an idea of where you are and where things are going. But you're right, the people component is a big differentiator. It's not that it never has been there. Right. It's almost as if management all of a sudden woke up and went, people, okay. And it's about trust. It's about developing the relationships and from there, verifying that you can perform, that you can do the job, staying. There's an old axiom that said basically in almost any contract situation, most contracts rarely last more than 2 years, but they can. And usually that happens when the companies you're working with all of a sudden feel that there's more than just a money relationship.
So what you're saying basically is people, we are now coming back to focusing on the people.
We're focusing on the people, the relationship, the trust, and like you said, Trish, the value proposition. How much value can that relationship bring to the company, and is it an ongoing value proposition? Does it continue? Because when you work with someone, they start developing knowledge, and that knowledge all of a sudden becomes valuable. And after years, they know as much as sometimes the internal people do, or vice versa. And so that's actually pretty interesting how to quantify that. Are you finding that more and more people are hiring people to analyze and try to develop strategies around what's, for example, in a learning management system, what's inputted into other kinds of metrics, and they're going, hey, look, take a look at this. We're doing well here, we're doing badly there. What's the problem? And how do they track that back to a human?
Well, and it's a great question, Rick. And basically where you can find the impetus of this happening right now is wherever disruption is occurring. And so by that I mean, like, what industries are really being disrupted, and disrupted in a way where it's either, change is not optional, change is the imperative. Like, they really have to make changes So for instance, one of the focus areas that we have right now where we're using this modern evaluation framework and then igniting it with the higher levels of analytics, like using predictive, is in the water utility industry in the United Kingdom. So in the UK right now, water utility is about to be deregulated. And what happens with an industry that gets deregulated, especially like the utilities, is that competition is introduced for the first time.
Right.
So as an example, a water utility in the UK right now, the way that they acquire a customer now in 2016 is they acquire a customer when somebody moves into their municipality, and they lose a customer when somebody moves out. I mean, the customers don't have any kind of choice. Well, that all changes with deregulation starting in 2018, in the year 2018. And so the water utility companies, again, as an example, have known for years that deregulation was going to happen. So they started a few years ago in starting to move more of their workforce to being more customer focused, right? Because now it's all about, you know, it used to be all about widgets. It used to be about the processing plant, it used to be about water distribution, it used to be about waste removal, and not that those things aren't going away, it's just that they're actually being, you don't make money off of those systems and that infrastructure unless you have customers that are willing to pay money for it. So in 2018, when customers begin to have a choice of the water utility that they get to use in the UK, again, it's all about customer acquisition and retention strategies, which means that you have to reposition a workforce that used to be very focused on the widgets and the infrastructure to now focus on service to the people. And that means not only service to the end customer, but then also service to each other as well. I mean, that means better internal communication so that together as an organization, utility companies can serve the end customer better. So you've got learning programs, development programs that have these really long time horizons, you know, where they've been trying to put together these people-centric cultures now for, 5 years. It's a, from the time that it's like, okay, go, to when it is that the disruption is really going to happen is a 5-year time horizon, or has for them been a 5-year time horizon. So if you're the chief learning officer or the head of people development for one of these organizations for the utility, how do you know over those 5 years that, come 2018, you're really well positioned, that you've really been able to work with, the workforce at the utility company to be able to make that impact, and that you're effective and that you're on track? And if you're not, why? And what can you do about it? And then be able to make those course corrections to make sure that you actually hit those metrics, the business result and the desired outcomes that are necessary for the organization to survive and thrive in what will be a new world for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. How?
Trish,
Go ahead, Linda.
Trish, you were going to present a case study on predictive analytics at the TLDC. Is that the case study you were just talking about?
Yeah, that's the case study. Thank you so much, Linda. That is exactly what I'm going to be presenting on at the Training, Learning, and Development Conference, the TLDC, in San Diego in early October. That'll be the first opportunity that I have. That's the inaugural, woohoo! I'm so excited that with this brand new conference and with the way that we're working on application and immersion in this conference, that I'll be presenting on that, and then actually showing people as part of the conference package, those who are interested, some information about what it is that they can do in order to start using more of these integrated measurement and evaluation frameworks, because you need both. So you need the modern and the integrated measurement and evaluation framework along with the analytics side in order to be able to put together a systematic process that gets you from, learning programs or training event to business result and desired outcomes. You need both of those things.
Yes. And you had something pre-conference going on that you were going to let people, or people that are going to the conference, work. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and thanks for that too, Linda. So the TLDC, I mean, we love a lot of the standard conferences that we all go to. And I mean, we, with the conference organizers and my fellow presenters who are involved with the conference, and I know Rick is very involved with the TLDC. And we've got the whole reason for this conference, for, why bring a brand new event into the world? Well, because we have a different vision for what it is that experience for delegates should be like. And we really want the TLDC to be 2.5 days where you not only consume content, but that you start actually putting it into action right away with support of the community around you. And support of the community around you means not only your peers, other delegates, but then also the presenters and the sponsors and the organizers, like all of us together in this immersive environment where we're really leveraging community in order to start putting things into action. Because there's so much enthusiasm and excitement that happens when we go to these different types of professional events, and then we leave and we don't necessarily find ourselves in sustainable environments in order to keep that momentum moving forward, and we lose that energy and that focus. So we want to try and jumpstart people as best as we can so that when it is that they leave TLDC in San Diego, that they really have already started putting, things into action, and that they've got even more momentum behind them. So to set that up, one of the things that I'm doing with all delegates, so all registered delegates for the TLDC automatically get access to the pre-conference session that I'm facilitating, and many thanks to our sponsor for that, InSync Training. So InSync Training is going to host, and I'm going to facilitate a virtual instructor-led session that's actually going to help people prepare for conference. So people will start putting their action plans together and follow a process that I have for really thinking through what it is that they need and what it is that they want to get out of the particular conference. And I mean beyond just content, like, I want to go to this session and I want to go to that session, like that's really important. But what people connections do you need? What resources do you need out of the expo hall? What's the contact information that you need? What are the top 3 things that if you left with that in hand, whether it's, an introduction to the right resource or, adding somebody to your network or being able to connect with, content deeper or to be able to start really working on skills and application in a particular subject matter, like what do you really want to focus on so that then people have a before the event, a during the event, and then a post-event kind of experience. So it's best foot forward all the way through that stream.
That's pretty good. When is the actual pre-conference?
That date is actually released to delegates. It's in September, so the conference is happening the first week of October, and this is scheduled for just beforehand. It's scheduled for just beforehand. So we've been sending the information out to delegates as it is that they register.
Okay, that's great. And by the way, if you're interested, the conference is the TLDC show, conference. That is the Training Learning Developer Conference, October 3rd through 5th at the Hyatt Mission Bay in San Diego. It should be really pretty.
And that's really a signature of what I've been working on. So this new framework and then firing it up with different milestones, I've been calling the learning system engineering, right? So learning systems engineering is the process that I'm using. And actually the conference is a really good example of this as well. There are things that need to happen before a learning event, there are things that need to happen during a learning event, and there are things that need to happen after a learning event in order for that learning event to be effective. And it's not always formal instruction. I mean, sometimes it's just simple communication. Sometimes it's performance support after it is that we exit, some kind of a training opportunity. So how do you take all of that and focus on a result and metrics that have to do with effectiveness throughout that entire continuum, and then look for quality metrics, right? So just like any other engineering process, how do we look at milestones that happen in that flow before, the during, the after, and then even the after, like, 30 days plus after some kind of training or learning program has occurred, how do we look for specific points in time to be able to use quality measurements to say, okay, are we on track or not? Are we on track or not? And if not, why? and what do we need to do about it? What actions need to be taken? And that's where the predictive analytics applied to the evaluation framework really comes into play. And I named it Learning Systems Engineering because if we look at it through more of a lens of engineering for a result rather than instructional design, which often has this focus on production of a product, like just a course or a workshop or e-learning, if we look at it as more of an engineering kind of process, it gives us a different lens to look at. I also wanted to use the word system because it's not just a systematic and comprehensive process getting from the starting point until that end result, but it's also systems like systems thinking where you're really understanding the interconnectivity of things, that what happens before really affects downstream what happens during, and then what happens after, and being able to measure, again, at those different quality points and those different milestones in time, that we can then really almost navigate by starlight to make sure that we hit the business results and make the business impact that we've promised to leadership within the organizations that we serve.
Now, when Trish speaks about systems, be careful. That's now IT will be taking over training soon. I can see it. I joke about that because I was a systems analyst for many years in the IT world. And it's nice to actually see systems coming into a learning environment where it really is woefully lacking. Nobody thinks anything's interconnected until way, 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 way after it happens. And then they try to figure out how to connect it correctly.
Absolutely. So Linda, I'm curious, in the work that you do, because you do a lot of work with voiceover with cartoons, like, did I hear correctly before that you're the voice of Miss Piggy and baby Miss Piggy in Germany?
I'm the German voice of the baby Miss Piggy, of the cartoon Miss Piggy. I was already in the United States when the Muppet Miss Piggy became available, and I was actually pregnant with my youngest, so I couldn't fly at that time. But yes, I'm her German voice.
And she's also done games.
Yes, but in your field, I do a lot of training, so I voice a lot of training in both languages. In German, it would be the High German. In English, I work more for global companies because they like my mixture of American English and British English. And I also do gamification or e-learning programs that are, role-played.
Got it. Well, and that makes sense that you've got, of course, you're broad in scope too, as far as the services that you offer. But a question for you, because I think, I remember years and years and years ago that it used to be that to produce a cartoon like The Simpsons would take like 6 months. So it was this huge effort. And basically what happens with a cartoon is that if the cartoon doesn't attract the audience that it needs, it gets canceled, right? I mean,
yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So that production process, in going through a production process, like in doing the voiceover for Baby Miss Piggy, there's a whole production process there too that makes sure that the quality is on track, isn't there?
Absolutely, yes. Yes. And different requirements for, originally, of course, in English in the United States, there were different requirements than for us, than dubbing it or lip syncing it into German. So what our process was taking the finished product and not only translating the content and the lines, but also adapting it. So sometimes rewriting jokes that maybe didn't make sense for a European audience. I remember once I was working on a little cartoon series, and one of the episodes was about the Tooth Fairy. Well, I was in the studio. The Tooth Fairy, I knew what I was talking about, but we went into the studio, and all of my actors were I was directing at the time, and they were there were big pauses, and until I caught on that the Germans at the time didn't know what the Tooth Fairy was. So then every time a character kind of turned their head, I'd try to write in some lines. And so throughout the episode, then the story of the Tooth Fairy would be told so that the entire episode then made sense.
See, now that's a great example of a quality check, right? Because here you've got a very Americanized audience that first episode was created for, and then you've got this reference to this entity called the Tooth Fairy, and if she's not known in Germany, right, where it is that the new media is going to play out, if you don't figure that out and actually be able to then make the modifications like you made, is there an opportunity to redo that episode?
Yes, basically then after each day of recording, I would go home and write lines and we would just kind of include that. Yes.
Awesome. But if it got all the way to the end and the German episode was released, would you be able to like redo the whole episode again?
We really would. I mean, I would care enough. I would want to redo it. But yes, I mean, it would miss the target audience. Nobody would understand what's going on.
Right. And then the consequence of that is eventually, you know, if that happened over a period of time with those episodes that were trying to be localized for a European audience, it would eventually lose that audience. They wouldn't get the ratings and the cartoon wouldn't be viable in Europe anymore.
Absolutely. And I love that you are that you are pointing out this example, because I think it's a very picturesque and colorful way of seeing issues that people working in the e-learning field are up against. Different languages, different mentalities. How do they approach that, and how do they gain and keep their audience, because they achieve their audience they achieve the success of their audience, and that's what keeps them going.
Yes, and I think, and Rick, we've had a little bit of a talk about this too, where training is now really beginning to compete with entertainment resources as well. And because we've got, we've been socialized as consumers globally to expect, a certain level of production level and being able to I watch something, now I'm not stuck with my television set anymore. I can basically take, Game of Thrones with me. So if I want to watch it on my TV, or I want to watch it on my laptop, or I want to watch it on my tablet device, I can do all of that. And I know I'm finding in my practice, in my business, that, my learners get #GrumpyCat if they can't, switch channels like that, and seamlessly. They don't want to have to turn it off here to turn it on the other device. They just want to be able to navigate and have it follow them Spotify does, or their DVR app does. But then there's also the production quality. We don't just want the instruction anymore. We want to be entertained. We want you to engage us. Otherwise, we just turn you off and we've got other choices. Do you find that, I think, is with your e-learning?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the problems in the industry on the whole, because you've got people that want to be entertained. You've got companies that want production and performance. You've got the vendors or the internal development staff which don't have the time, effort, or budget to put together something that looks professional, is entertaining, and doesn't break one of 3 billion laws that say you can't say this, you can't say that, you have to be careful of that, 17 protected groups, you have to watch everything. And so you run into the stupidity of the legal system with the really got to get it done of the companies and the needs of the learners. So you really have 3 different things in juxtaposition against each other. And that makes for a trying and interesting. All you can try to do is push the development a little further each time. Push the bounds. Push to make it more interesting, more engaging. Even add humor into it sometimes. But humor is risky because, of course, you get sued for everything. We've been through some of this. We've done thousands of projects in e-learning, and you've got to be very careful what you say, what you do. Not that we enjoy it, but the customers want it that way. And the bigger the client, the more they're protectionist.
Well, and what's interesting, too, just kind of going back to what you were saying about systems and metrics, and your background, again, going back to your days as an IT analyst, what we're starting to do now, on that note, with the legalities of information and what can be said or what can't be said, and what information can be shared and what information can't be shared, we're starting to now unlock these different people systems to be able to use all of that data, to mine that data, and actually start to run people-related data. So what do I mean by people-related data? I mean like the learning management system, I mean like the HRIS, the Human Resources Information System, which holds personnel information, the talent management system, the performance management system. So we're starting to use things like specifications like XAPI, the Experience API, which is actually coming out of the ADL, which is a government agency here in the United States. We're starting to mine those different systems in order to put together a composite, holistic picture about people, individual people, and about performance. And, I know one of the things that one of our colleagues and friends, Aaron Silvers, is working on is not only in bringing XAPI about and helping to promote that with the different systems, but then also the interoperability of that information. Who owns it? Who can access it? Who can leverage it? What can you do with it? What inferences are made? But that's where we're starting to get into, when we take that kind of data and feed it into algorithms, right? So whether those algorithms, so analytics are at 4 different levels. So in the analytics world, outside of learning, outside of IT, there are 4 different levels to analytics. There's descriptive analytics, which is pretty much what we've been used to. Descriptive analytics in the training world have been number of people trained, number of people in class, number of courses developed, number of courses delivered. Those are descriptive analytics. Then we get into diagnostic analytics, right? So diagnostic analytics begin to move us down the path of what's happening and why. Like what's happening and why. So if we had an expectation about a particular metric on the exit of a training program, why did it or didn't it meet whatever that particular expectation was? That's starting to get into diagnostic. And diagnostic analytics start to move us from that traditional training and development lens to just starting to get into that performance consulting lens, which is another big shift that's happening. Then we get into predictive. And predictive gets into really looking at what's happening with individuals and why. So the difference between like predictive and a forecast is 2 different things. So one is with a forecast, like when we forecast the weather, we're forecasting the weather usually localized to a specific area, and we are resigning ourselves to whatever that expected outcome is going to be. So if it's a forecast in Chicago tomorrow for there to be rain, then I'm going to make sure that I have on my, my slicker and my wellies. I'm going to put on my slicker and my boots and make sure I have my umbrella ready for rainfall tomorrow. If we were talking about predictive instead, then applying predictive to something like training transfer. So for example, in one of the predictive algorithms that I'm using, when people exit a training event and go back into the workplace, we're using that algorithm to predict who will and who most likely won't actually take what they just learned, the knowledge and skills they just learned, and apply it back on the job. And also have an understanding of why. Now, the reason why we're doing that, and here's where it differs from forecast, is number one is we're assigning an index score to each individual learner, to each individual delegate. And number two, the intent of predictive versus forecast is in predictive, your intent is to then influence the contributing factors to produce the outcome that you want. So if we find in our predictive model that people are scoring low on learning transfer, then we're also understanding why it is that learning transfer is so low. And then we have an understanding and put an action plan together about non-training and training-related interventions that can be done in order to boost that training transfer.
And would you say, Trish,
level, Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The 4th level in analytics is actually prescriptive. And prescriptive is when you get to such a level of capability and maturity in measurement and evaluation and in your analytical models and your data integrity. You've got to have clean data, otherwise it's garbage in, garbage out. But prescriptive starts getting into the minute that you recognize a particular symptom, you know exactly what the suite of interventions need to be in order to be able to keep things on track for success. So there are those 4 different levels of maturity in an analytics model. Again, in any field, in any domain, those are the 4, and that's what it is that they're called.
And what I was going to say was, and you actually answered it with your 4th point, is that predictive in the beginning isn't very good because you don't have enough data. The more you gather data and the more you can analyze how accurate the data is, that's when you get into actually taking true advantage of that predictive, because in the beginning it just doesn't quite know everything yet. So it's just sort of interesting. It's a little bit of there's a time involved to get predictive data to be really, truly useful. It doesn't have to be too long, but there's always a little bit of time.
Well, you're right, Rick. And again, in any field, in any domain, and here's the thing, that analytical framework has been around for quite a long time. So I worked for, you're right, I started out actually in the training profession as an IT professional. And I used to work for Xerox in the 1990s, and I was both a senior application specialist, which meant that I did programming, but I was also part of the distance education team. So I had twin responsibilities for Xerox during my tenure there. I was helping them stand up their distance education offerings for the first time, but then I was also out in the field with my other, straight up IT peers, and we were looking at, again, straight up information technology types of projects. And so one of them that I worked on in the 1990s was for a wholesale grocery. And what they wanted to be able to do was that this was the start of, hey guys, we should put together these loyalty cards, and customers who shop at our stores, we should actually collect that data and then be able to mine that data later on to be able to find patterns in the data, patterns and trends, not just to demographics and people in groups, but down to individuals, right? So not just white American woman in the, western suburbs of Chicago, but Trish Uhl, and then be able to market and promote specific to the individual. Do that one-to-one marketing versus being able to, market just to a segment based on demographic. But in the 1990s, that was like too costly, number one, to capture the data, and number two, to store it. And that now has changed. I mean, so here we are, decades forward, where it's now cheap to store data. It's cheap to be able to capture data. Loyalty cards are part of just about every shopping experience that it is that we have. And we know in some domains and in some industries, like in retail, they've been able to market to us and promote to us one-to-one for a very long period of time using data mining and multi-dimensional cubes and being able to report against different dimensions of customer data to be able to then dial in to a specific individual. So that's been going on in retail now for more than 10 years. And again, I remember back at Xerox in the 1990s when that was a fantasy. Like that was what, organizations like this company, this wholesale grocer lived for. And now here we are at the brink of being able to apply that same kind of data science and that same kind of measurement and evaluation discipline in a way where we can start to do that with people to affect their immediate training, to affect their long-term development, to affect things like culture change, and to be able to really ignite the learning and performance function, or the learning and performance is a strategic capability as competitive advantage for organizations that are adopting people-centric cultures.
And with that, I think we're going to end the show because we're at the end of our time. But if you want to learn more about this and get into some hands-on practical experience and learn how to use this, go to the TLDC and join Trish's pre-conference. You'll have a very good time with that, and you'll learn how to put it into practice. Correct?
Absolutely.
So Trish, as always... Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, people can also connect with me on LinkedIn. So Trish Uhl, and you'll see my little name down here at the bottom of the screen, and then also at Trish Uhl, my Twitter address. Those are two of the best ways in order to get in touch with me.
Trish, I have one last question. Do you also help individual e-learning companies, with their analytics, with diagnosing why, could we become more effective if we did this? Is that something you do?
Yeah, exactly. So it's how do you what the work that I'm doing now is actually working with organizations that produce learning, either instructor-led classroom or virtual instructor-led online. And I have just started to talk with e-learning companies about being able to do this same thing. But how do we become broader in our view in looking at that whole, upstream and downstream implications, and not so localized just on the product that it is that we're producing?
Great. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
And with that, Trish, as always, look forward to seeing you in about 3 weeks.
In San Diego.
Yeah.
And I think, Rick, how many times have I been on eLearnChat?
Oh gosh, 5?
I think this is my 5th time. So yay, cake. Thank you both. Thank you both so much for having me back.
Oh man, you can stay. We'll hold that chair open for you right there if you want.
Thanks.
But we will see you in about 3 weeks. And if you do want to meet Trish in person, and I've only met Trish in person once. Well, actually, virtually in person twice if we count a crash landing on an island. But that's a different story.
Yeah.
But only once in 8 years? Jeez. It's
Yeah.
and we've been at the same conferences missing each other. It's just weird. But anyway, we will see Trish at the TLDC. It's going to be a great conference. Should be a lot of fun. Lots of good people will be there, not only attending, but giving sessions. And then you've got that interesting project that you're going to be working with Trish. So I think it would be well worth it just to go and meet Trish and get more familiar with what she does and what she's talking about, because it is going to be the future of e-learning in the future. We're getting there. The future is kind of now, but we're getting there. And Trish, thank you for coming on. Linda, as always, a pleasure. And we will see you next week on eLearnChat. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.